So viewers, last week, Adobe announced their new generative AI feature for Photoshop. I really enjoyed messing around with that generative AI feature. Essentially, it's like the most advanced in-painting and out-painting you have ever seen integrated. It really did blow my mind in the video. Reactions to Adobe's generative AI were sort of lukewarm. There were a lot of people like myself that thought it was really revolutionary and really amazing, but there's a lot of other people that are like, well, I have pretty good in-painting that's available with stable diffusion applications, and I can run it at home, and I can generate any kind of lewd and a little bit more inappropriate things than Adobe would let me generate inside of Photoshop. So it really depended on the use case whether it was a heavy hitter for you or not. Today I want to do a little bit of a follow-up video and do a deeper dive into Adobe's new feature and do a little bit more testing and messing around. Viewers, this video is sponsored by HeyGen. Here's the rundown with HeyGen. HeyGen is an AI video generation platform that allows you to create talking avatars. First, you choose from one of their hundreds of different avatars, and once an avatar is selected, you can go ahead and fill in the script with whatever text you want. And that's pretty much it. You click the submit button, and then you wait as your avatar video is generated. HeyGen just launched their brand new AI outfits, and this is really cool. First, we pick from any one of these avatars that we want to dress up in a certain way. We click on that avatar, and then we quite simply provide the description for the clothing style we want to generate. In this example, we're going to take this suit, and we're going to turn it into a navy blue buttoned t-shirt. Sure thing, here are some navy blue buttoned t-shirt options. Let's go with the denim shirt with snap buttons. And as you can see, it all goes through this wonderful chatbot interface, and in about 60 seconds we have our selections. And I gotta say, all of these are pretty fantastic. Pretty much flawless shirt designs, and they actually fit on the character very well. I'm gonna go ahead and pick the first one, and we'll click the save button. Now I'm able to create as I would normally with this brand new character. So viewers, click the link down in the description below and check out HeyGen with their brand new AI outfit feature. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. I wanted to start out here by showing what other people have been creating with Adobe's generative Photoshop feature. On Twitter, Coffee Vectors posted this time lapse, and he says to point out that he's not actually adding any descriptions into the Photoshop prompt, but he's just letting it fill in. And it's a pretty cool looking time lapse. There is supposed to be music over this, but I can't play it for copyright reasons. You can see he has two different characters that are very similar and then uses the Generative Fill feature to actually fill in the center, which is something that I want to try out today. So viewers, remind me in the comments down below to try that, or I might forget. And then you can see he actually adds a whole ceiling to the entire scene. Again, blending those two images together, then further expands it over to the left, further filling out that left-hand image, and it does a pretty good job creating a singular, coherent piece, I think, and he goes even farther to make it a pretty much 16:9 aspect ratio image, and you can see it kind of got a little bit lazy there on the side of the image, but he's trying to fix it up by highlighting it. Again, this is a time-lapse, so this all probably took him about 45 minutes or so of generative fill. I want you guys to think about how long this would have taken normally inside of Photoshop. I mean, you're condensing essentially, tens of hours of work into about an hour. That's really the magic of generative AI in Photoshop. So Joseph Blaze here on Twitter also posted editing a Mr. Beast thumbnail, which I thought was pretty cool. He goes through here to make a few changes. He goes to the plate and actually adds a steak onto the plate, which honestly looks like it was supposed to be there the whole time. It did a really good job making that steak look like it's on the plate. Just imagine all the funny images you can make of your friends with this. He goes over there and removes the day number 19 from the top corner and puts a picture frame up. He then goes ahead and changes the color of the fork to actually a golden fork, which is pretty cool. Finally adds a glass of water, which actually reflected fairly well. It looks like it reflected accurately with Mr. Beast's fist. So honestly, mighty impressive job that Photoshop's generative AI feature did. And finally, we've got another little time-lapse video posted by Dan Barrage on Twitter. Again, highlighting the center of the image, typing in some text there to add a person on the street, then erases the whole side of it and adds in a taxi cab moving on the street, then goes ahead and it starts to add some trees, people towards the left, the moon up in the center, adds in some more street lamps, So yeah, it truly is amazing the amount of stuff that you can add in. So if you viewers at home remember from my last Photoshop generative AI video, this was the image that we created. The starting image was actually just my cat right here, which is a real picture I took of my cat, but we expanded it out on both sides, gave the animals hats, and of course actually generated the turtle and the puppy. And it came out to be a pretty cool photo. I really like it. Let's go ahead and take a Midjourney image and just try to expand it. I'm going to do that by going to the crop feature here and just sort of cropping this outwards. Move it down as well. So we're going to see the rest of this creature's body. So once I've expanded the scene here, I'm going to highlight the bottom portion like this. Go to Generative Fill. I'm going to go ahead and type in humanoid cyborg, photographic, futuristic. This has been happening to me a lot lately. It says system is currently busy. Please wait and retry your request. That means Photoshop is getting a lot of requests for this. It is annoying though, because in the professional paid version of Photoshop, if I got a notification like that, I would be upset because you're paying monthly for the service. And there we go. We actually got a somewhat decent result here. Let's go through the others. That's pretty good as well. That's probably the most accurate one, I would say, to the top portion of the image, but it did a pretty good job filling everything out. We've also got another cyborg to this side, which is interesting. We don't really want her there, so we're going to remove this. And you know what? Let's just have no prompt here and just do the generative fill and see what happens. And it managed to fill everything in pretty decent. We did a pretty good and quick expansion on this image. Oh, this was a good result for sure. And of course, you can scroll through all of the different options that they provide for you. This one's really good as well. I would say this one's the best one. Let's go ahead and expand this out even further. So I want to combine this with yet another image that was AI generated. So we've got a pretty similar looking image here of another cyborg humanoid. And we'll see if the AI can sort of make these images make sense together. They're pretty similar, so I have high hopes. Just go ahead and select the boundaries right in between these two images, and then we'll just click the Generative Fill button and see what happens. Okay, it's tried its best over here. It can't really comprehend the separation or the inclusion of both of them. Okay, this is probably the closest we got so far. I think the giant white block is really confusing it, so we'll just go ahead and do Generative Fill on this as well. And again, I'm just going to do no prompts. I like to no prompt this thing because it does a really good job of just figuring it out for you most of the time. And I just find that very impressive. Here's something that you're going to notice that it does a lot is it tries to pick up context clues. So it noticed that this cyborg was a female and tried to make this one a female as well. And it did an alright job. That one's not too bad. Still not a perfect morph in between these two scenes. I'm going to go highlight this whole thing and see if it can redo this generative fill to make things make more sense. Again, system is currently busy. Retry it, please. Photoshop, you got to get the servers on lock, because if I am trying to do generative fill and it's a full feature added into Photoshop, not just some beta thing, I'm going to be upset when it says that. And there we go. It made a pretty meaningful connection, I think, between these images. This one's definitely the best. It's just sort of like a blurry mesh background. So, you know what? It did a pretty good job, I think. No real complaints here on this front. But I think this was kind of an easy example because it can just kind of make this blurry bokeh mess in the background, and it all turns out fine. This is a really good Midjourney generation that I just want to see expanded. But one of the tests that I always wanted to do with this thing is like, how far out is it allowed to expand? When you do a bigger generation area like this, it just generates in a lower resolution relative to your original image because it can only generate in like a 1024 by 1024 resolution, like Dolly 2 or any of the other image generators. So we might get really low res stuff, but it might actually pick up the context fairly well. So if I wanted to do actually a very high res expansion of this, I would have to zoom in or only do like this section by this section by this section and then just slowly build out. But you are allowed to just do it all at once like this. Ah, okay, so now it's actually generating white blankness because I expanded it so large. It's like, well, the image is probably supposed to be inside of a white blob. You can see it actually did a really terrible job with this addition over here, maybe because it's so big. Definitely don't try to expand areas that are too large because it just turns into this horrible blobby mess. Here's another fantastic Midjourney generation that really deserves some expansion. So we're going to expand this thing the correct way. by doing it fairly slowly. So we'll just start out by expanding it. By the way, you can hold shift in Photoshop and do like L-shaped expansions and stuff like that. So it doesn't always have to be, expanding it this way first and then it getting confused because half of the image is still white pixels. Wow, this expansion turned out really fantastic. I am mighty impressed with this. See, is it high resolution as well? It does seem to be about the same high resolution as the rest of this little iguana character. Go ahead and I can see like a line of error. So that is one thing that the Photoshop generative AI is also really good as. If you see like a little line in the sand like this, you can do generative fill and just clear up that line. Oh, we had an issue there. It said that our generated content potentially violates user guidelines. Another really annoying thing about this generative AI Photoshop is it's super nannied. Even if you type a prompt in and like spell a word wrong, it'll be like, oh, it's not English. You didn't type English in. Super, super annoying. That is the worst part and something that Adobe really needs to fix. You need to let users have more creative control over this generative AI thing, or open source tools will just take over. And there we go. We smoothed that section out quite a lot. There's a few different ones you could pick from, but I think the first one was fine. We've also got another image of an iguana or I think this is a chameleon actually, that is similar and I want to expand on. So we'll expand the image this way, add our brand new image in over here and put it towards this side. So far, so good. Pretty similar themed images, but you'll notice the tonality and the lakes and everything are completely different, and it does not have much room to fix this. Let's just see how it fills in the white block in the middle here, and we'll go from there. And it seems to be having a pretty difficult time mushing these two images together. We'll start off with the best one, which is this one, and then we'll give it a bigger chunk to modify. We'll give it this whole chunk in the middle to figure out how to make these look correct next to each other. The generated images were removed because they violate our user guidelines. It looks like only one of them was, though, because we actually did get a result, which is interesting. So this one turned out pretty good, and so did this one. Okay, it did a decent job at figuring out how to combine them. The lake is still a little messed up, though, so we'll allow it to fill in and fix up this part of the lake. It's really incredible how well a lot of images can be actually blended together and you didn't even know it was possible. But this thing sure does show you how it is. Again, more of our images were removed because they violate user guidelines, but it seems to be only one of the three. So we still have some decent ones left. And that's a pretty good blend, I think, of these two images. I really didn't think it was possible because they were so close together, but it did a shockingly good job. I'm impressed. I mean, now we have this nice wide angle photo of these two characters, and we could expand it even a little bit further. How about we push this down just a little bit? And guys, I do recommend getting the free trial of Photoshop if you don't have it, because this is so much fun to mess around with, and it's going to be an amazing tool in the future. Like I said in my previous video, I think I might have to start paying monthly for Photoshop just so I can have this generative fill feature, because it seems like it's going to be super useful for my daily workflow in making YouTube videos, specifically thumbnails. And there we go. It filled in the shadow so well and the rest of the sand together. Really amazing job. Let's see. This one any better? That one's even better, I think, maybe. It's a little bit of a weird cutoff, though. Shadows and everything. Man, it is really all too good. I like this, but I don't like the shadow. And you know what we can do about that? We could just highlight just this shadow and have it blend the shadows in just a little bit better. You can get your cake and eat it too with this thing, because you can just do edits on edits on edits and fix everything until it is just perfect. The real downside to this so far is the fact that Adobe services are not really working perfectly all the time. Adobe yells at you if it's not in English, even though your prompt could be English. And then what we just literally saw, generated images were removed because they quote unquote violate user guidelines. So it's just super strict, way too strict, honestly. We'll just go with this one. I think that looks pretty good. That came out well. If we zoom in here, all of the pixels and everything still seem like they are fairly well in order with the original resolution of the first image, which was only a 1024 by 1024 image. But yeah, blended everything very, very well together. Again, it's the best outpainting, the best inpainting that we have seen so far. It looks like we're trying to build a little band here of Reptile, so maybe we should expand on that idea. I am going to just first really quick expand the top of this image a little bit, just to make the whole image feel a little bit more whole. And it did a mighty fine job expanding that. I knew it would be really good at that. We've got clouds, or we could pick trees here. I like that it does give you some different options sometimes. A little bit hard to pick. The clouds, I think, look a little bit better. This first one's pretty good as well. We'll just go ahead and pick that first one. I think that's the best one. And now, like I said, we want to continue on with that whole band idea, but right now we have two guitarists with the same exact kind of guitar, which doesn't make much sense. So how about we have this guy actually on drums this time? Go ahead and highlight this here. We know what we need changed. And now I'm going to do something pretty interesting. I'm going to go find the original Midjourney prompt for this image, because that's going to help us build a new prompt for Adobe, because this is a very specific change we want to make. All right, so here is the original Midjourney image. Oh, that is a very large prompt. Oh, wow, that is definitely not a ukulele Midjourney. All right, we'll go back into our generative fill, and we use some of the prompt here. Chameleon wearing sunglasses. Neither of these guys are wearing sunglasses. The prompts were pretty much identical, by the way. All right, chameleon playing drums on a drum set. Let's go ahead and generate that. Okay, well, we got like a big drum. That's kind of cool. Oh, wow, it all went for just ginormous drums. Kind of don't make a lot of sense. This one's close to being all right, so we'll stick with that one, and then we'll have this AI fix up his hands a little bit here, because his hands are screwed up. Again, we can hold shift and do two separate areas at once, which is pretty crazy, honestly, and just do generative fill and see what happens. Oh my god, it's trying to remove his hands entirely? No, this doesn't make sense. Okay, this one's all right. Let's try to prompt it and see if that fixes it up. Okay, that's a little bit better there. Much, much better. Okay, these are not great, but the first result's not too bad. It kind of makes sense. Although now we need to fix the rest of the chameleon's body down here. So we'll just add down here. Ooh, and it does not want to do this. It's just trying to add a little chameleon down there. Well, that's a cute little image. I guess we'll leave that in. Maybe we'll have it so he is like sitting in a chair here. I guess that makes sense. Here we go. He's got like a little chair there. All right, now right in the middle here, I want to go ahead and add a bearded dragon who is singing the song. Again, we're going to go back to this original prompt, which is just an insanely large one. I'm going to toss it in here. All right, let's see if we get a good generation. Oh my, it did not like this at all. I think we just have to scrap this entire one. Let's see if we could just get a actual photo of a bearded dragon photo we could just plop in here. So this image we're tossing right in here doesn't really look like it makes much sense with what we already have here, but we're going to see if the AI is going to help us make it make sense. So we'll plop that in here, and then what I'm going to do is just sort of highlight around it. So we've got this very weird highlight around here. It did a decent job blending him in here. Maybe this back portion needs some work. It doesn't make too much sense. We'll highlight that. It's just adding more bearded dragons hanging out with him. All right, I think we should move on to our final image edit. Oh, and for my final edit, I've picked myself, because what's more fun than editing a photo of yourself? All right, we're going to expand upon this image first and foremost, so we got some room to play around. Here we go. It actually did a really good job spending all this. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Here we go. We'll pick this one. This is the simplest. I want to see a frog sitting on top of my head. Give it a little bit more room to work there. Frog. Okay, that is the reason I picked myself as a subject, because this is just way too funny. This one's also pretty funny. That's more of a toad. This is like a classic frog. I'm going to go with this one. Although the shadows don't make much sense, so I'm going to see if it can maybe redo a little bit of this at the bottom. Try to make it blend in more with my hair. I hope it does a good job here. And it did not really a great job. Maybe this one added a little extra hair in, but I'm just going to remove this because it looks worse in my opinion. And you know what? Just to spice this photo up, we're going to zoom in here. We're going to add an extra frog on top of his head too, because why not? And we got some sort of a frog. He's missing an eyeball. I don't know why. We'll go ahead and let him get an extra frog eyeball in there. Let's see if we could just figure out that the eyeball is missing. And it definitely was able to figure it out. Good job, Photoshop. Very impressive. This photo right now does imply that I am indeed a frog. All right, this is going to be interesting. Let's see if I can go ahead and highlight everything under my neck here and just make me be wearing like a frog suit. Does that make sense? I wonder if that will work. Yeah, not really working out too well so far. Will make me holding a frog in this hand, actually. That makes a lot of sense. None of these are really turning out too well. This is probably the best one, but it couldn't put the frog in my hand. It had to have me holding something. I don't know. It's kind of a silly little image. I'm just going to draw a bunch of circles and then just see how many frogs this thing decides to generate. Okay. It does always err on the side of caution pretty much. So if you do a bunch of random circles like that, it doesn't really buy you anything. Anyways, I think this is a pretty funny little image. So viewers, let me know how you feel about generative AI from Photoshop down in the comments below. I have a lot of fun messing around with it. I think it's a pretty revolutionary tool. It just has a few major flaws that need to be tweaked and fixed. And Photoshop still has time and Adobe still has time to fix them. We will have to see if they follow through. The open source space, as many pointed out from my last video, is a very dangerous competitor. Thanks for watching, viewers, and I'll see you in the next one. Check out my Discord and the rest of my videos.